Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another Ordeal video. So as the title and thumbnail imply, we're going to be taking a look at Jonellie. Now Jonellie is a decently strong character from the first season, and he does decently well against Anton initially. So I thought, what if we put him up against the rest of the Wolfpack members? Now there are some stipulations I want to go over. I'm only going to be using the season 1 versions of the Wolfpack members, as that puts each character and Jonellie on a more even playing field, right? I'm also going to be excluding Anton and Andrea. Now Anton, for obvious reasons, we already saw his first fight, so there's no reason to have him fight Jonellie again or the video. And Andrea, because she is a top 150 member and she's relatively strong already, I feel like it's very clear that she would do very well against him. These are also all going to be one-on-one fights, so we know the other Wolfpack members were in pairs fighting against, their respective opponents. However, for the sake of this fight in this video, I'm going to be keeping all of these one-on-ones just like how Jonellie was against Anton. And I will be referring to Jonellie's forms as base form, which is the initial version we see him fighting Anton against, where the blades are wrapped around his arms; armor form, where he clads himself in more of the Aquaman metal, covering his face, shoulders, and his arms, which also seem to increase his damage; and full cowl, as that is what he refers to his giant form as. But with that out of the way, I would like to ask, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, on to the vid. Now Jonellie's first opponent is going to be Louise. So as we see in his fight against Anton, Jonellie is more of a close quarters fighter, something that Louise was shown having a bit of trouble with, as when Cass gets initially close to him, we see Louise kind of staggering. Now Louise actually may be able to protect himself with his Ash. We see his Ash is able to cover Cass's bomb, which had the power of 3 nukes, right? And we see it containing the explosion and blast radius very well. So if Louise is able to kind of do like a rotation style barrier, he might be able to protect himself against Jonellie's slashes, Now we see Jonellie's armored form is able to actually adapt to the damage of Anton's staff. So if Jonellie was actually taking damage from Louis's Ash, there's a high chance that the armor will actually adapt to the Ash. The armored form would also boost Jonellie's strength, as after adapting to Anton's staff, he's able to simply counter him, as well as toss him away and slash at him. So in a fight against Louise, this would make the situation that much more worse for him, as he has no natural defenses that would help him otherwise, and Jonellie is getting a AP boost. See, this leads me to believe that Jonellie would be able to defeat Louise relatively easily in his armored form, or in his base honestly, even if he was having trouble with the Ash. Now you also may be able to make an argument that in character, Jonellie would try to push Louise similar to how he does Anton, causing him to go to full cowl, and then maybe Louise will respond with an Ash Hydra, but there's truly nothing showing, or it's a very unknown factor, that the AP that the Ash Hydra or anything that Louise can make on that size would also have the AP. Full cowl also does show a nice relative speed, so at the end, Louise would lose to Jonellie. Now, Jonellie's next opponent is going to be Tevin, and Tevin is actually going to pose a bit of a problem for Jonellie when he uses his Rhino Hide, as its durability is very good. It's able to withstand an auto-arc burial from Rokash, right? So Jonellie's blades on his arms and his protrusions won't be able to actually damage him, right? Now, this will cause Jonellie to switch up and activate his armored form. Now, it's kind of unsure if even the armored form will be able to actually damage Rhino Hide, and there's no reason at this point for Tevin to switch to Lion Hide, because Lion Hide is more power and he would be losing defense. So if the Rhino Hide is able to endure the actual impacts and damage and slashes from Jonellie's armored form, then Tevin is going to be putting on the pressure against him, right? It really comes down to if you think Tevin's Rhino Hide will be able to endure the armored form or not. It's kind of up for interpretation. However, this is when Jonellie will switch to full cowl, and there's really nothing saying that Tevin's Rhino Hide will be able to endure any hit from Jonellie that will land. And Tevin has nothing else in his kit aside from Lion Hide, which, as I said, won't be able to not only not endure any hits from full cowl, but it also will not be able to dish out any hits of its own that will be able to match the AP of full cowl, right? This is honestly a very simple matchup, as Tevin initially is mostly a durability and close quarters oriented character, and and that is very similar to Jonellie himself. However, Jonellie's AP, as he goes further into his techniques, will allow him to overtake Tevin, and Tevin at this time has nothing in his kit that will allow him to match the AP of Jonellie, which gives Jonellie the win. Now, Jonellie's next opponent is going to be Azam. Now, Azam will more than likely start in his lesser kitting form, similar to how he was fighting against Cass, which in that state, Jonellie will be able to react to him just like Cass. I mean, Cass is able to perceive him and counter all in seemingly one motion, right? Now, Jonellie will be able to replicate something very similar, if not better, because he actually has blades that will deal a little bit more lasting damage, during the fight, right? And if Azam does try to come close in and Jonellie is reacting to him, you could also say that he will be using the protrusions to kind of pincer him. Now, with the aspect of him being, damaged and being reacted to a lot more, this may prompt Azam to actually fully activate kitting, which will be a bigger problem for Jonellie, because it will allow Azam to comfortably outspeed him, which means Jonellie more than likely won't be able to react at that point, right? And his durability will be a little bit higher because of how haste type talents work, so he'll be able to strike with a lot more impact and damage, exactly how he does against Cass, when he kicks him in those two panels, right? Now, this will definitely prompt Jonellie to use his armored form, similarly to how he does against Anton when he activates his shift, right? This will give him a better AP. It'll allow him to more than likely damage Azam a lot better, right? Now, you could also make the argument that it will allow him to react to him better, but I'm not sure if Anton gains a speed buff when he shifts, so I'm not sure if Jonellie, when he used his armor form, also gained a reactionary speed buff. But if he does not, then I think Azam will still be comfortable outspeeding him, right? You may be able to argue that Jonellie's armor will be able to withstand some of that damage. Now, it's unsure if the actual armor will also be able to kind of adapt to the AP and damage that Azam is giving him, which will more than likely prompt Jonellie to actually go to full cowl instead. Now, when he actually activates full cowl in this instance, there is a still possibility that even if he's able to kind of perceive Azam might just be able to consistently outspeed and outmaneuver him, right? This might get to a point where Azam may not be able to actually damage Jonellie in his full cowl, but Jonellie won't be able to actually hit Azam because he's too fast, right? So the fight kind of ends based on interpretation. If you think that Azam's fully awakened kitting has enough impact necessary to run through Jonellie similar to the True Staff, then Jonellie loses right here. But if you think Azam's speed and durability won't be able to outpower or match to full cowl, then Azam loses, or at the very least Azam might run out of chi before Jonellie does, and then he loses, right? So I am gonna leave that one kind of up to y'all to kind of debate and discuss in the comments, right? Now, Jonellie's last opponent will be Shay, and Shay will actually pose the biggest problem for Jonellie for quite a few reasons. So the first is, since Shay will be fighting Jonellie by himself, Shay will actually be able to access more of his state without the fear of harming others. We see that when he starts to fight Rokash with Andrea, so he says that he nearly lost control twice and that he didn't want to burn anybody, but the fact that he'll be fighting Jonellie by himself will allow him to either go all out from the jump, or it will allow him to kind of slowly up the ante of his fight without fear of causing harm to anybody around him, right? So for starters, with a Contio, Shay will more than likely be able to just break and sever through Jonellie's protrusions. I see no reason why a Contio at this point won't be any sort of comparable to the Falstaff, who consistently just breaks through Jonellie's protrusions, right? So I don't see why there would be any argument against that, okay? But if you do think that Shay wouldn't use a Contio, he still has that same heat output, more or less, is still being used on his hands when he's striking, or he'll use Trash's Armaton, which is a very close range kicking motion, but he'll be using these all close quarters, which he'll more than likely be matching Jonellie in that aspect, but because of the nature of his talent and it being a state type, and it will potentially slowly increasing his firepower, he'll just be slowly overwhelming him, right? Now, this slow overwhelmness of the fight might actually prompt Jonellie to use his armor form a lot faster, or he'll be impressed and kind of want to push Shay, so he'll also choose to use the armor form, right? But it won't really matter much because Shay can just as easily match anything that Jonellie can do with his state, right? Whether it be a lesser form or whether it be combat mode, the fight will either remain even or it will become closely outpowered, right? Or outclassed in Shay's favor, right? right? Now, with the armored form, you might be able to say it can adapt to the heat, but like I said, if Shay is using either the full aspect of his state or, is slowly progressing into it, the heat will just be increasing, and that won't bode very well for Jonellie at all, because he can adapt to like one set of heat. If Shay is increasing the heat, Jonellie is not going to be able to adapt to that new increased heat faster, right? Now, this will more than likely prompt Jonellie to actually use full cowl, but if Shay is using combat mode, there's no reason for him to not punch through or actually just straight up defeat Jonellie, right? Now, Anton was able to use his true staff to break Rokash's protection eyes, and Shay in combat mode is actually able to do the very same thing when he uses the tomb. Now, you could make an argument that, the chi and durability of them wasn't the same, but even Andre is able to kind of slash through them with the Bada Jutsu, and like I said, Shay does it, later on when Rokash does the tomb. So there's no reason that Anton being able to throw his true staff at Jonellie and then completely destroy him with the larger version of it, and then later on using that same true staff to just destroy Rokash's protection eyes, and then Shay is able to do the same exact thing. There's no reason that Shay in his full state in combat mode at that time wouldn't be able to output enough heat to either ram through or just outright create a wave of heat that would just incinerate Jonellie at that point. And no matter how you look at it, this is where Jonellie stops, and I am sad to say, but this is where it ends. So to give a little recap, Jonellie should be able to defeat Louise, Tevin, potentially Azam, but he will stop at Shay. Now, he's going to be able to defeat Louise because he is a more close quarters combatant, and Louise is a range controller, which means he'll be at a distance and he'll be able to kind of get in and close that gap. He also just has more consistent AP feats, right? And like showings, right? Now with Tevin, he's going to be able to defeat Tevin more than likely with full cowl as his win condition, because Tevin's Rhino hide does have very good durability, and it's kind of unsure if even in armored form that Jonellie will be able to consistently damage Tevin, right? Now you also, and I forgot to mention this, you also might be able to argue that at that point before Jonellie uses his full cowl, Tevin might be able to defeat him. Now I personally don't think so, but you could make an argument for it, right? And then onto Azam. Azam will cause a bit of a problem for Jonellie because he'll be feeding, but Jonellie should be able to react to the base version of Kidding, but when he fully awakens Kidding, that will pose a big trouble for him. Now then it kind of comes down to when Jonellie uses his full cowl, if you think Azam's speed at that point will be able to deal enough damage or kind of run through him similar to Anton's staff, or if you think the durability of the full cowl and like the kind of speed and power at which he strikes will be too much for Azam, right? And then he loses at Shay because Shay should be able to just consistently match everything that Jonellie has. He can use a Contio at a distance, he can use it up close, he can continue to up the firepower, he's going to be fighting by himself, so there's nothing that he actually has that Shay cannot just consistently match. And then when he uses his state, he'll more than likely overpower him even in full cowl, right? As like I said, Anton and the full staff should be similar in strength to Shay when he's activating his full state, right? But that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it was probably a little bit short and I probably could have explained certain things well, but if you do want me to clarify in the comments, just let me know. But if you enjoyed, leave a like, share with others, and I will see y'all in the next one.